Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch video, and today we're looking at possibly the best entry-level Rolex. Okay, so same as with all my other reviews, let's go back in time now and look at the history of this really cool watch. So we're going to go back to 1952 when Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay attempted to climb Mount Everest. And Rolex actually sponsored their mission and gave Sir Hillary a Oyster Perpetual to wear. And it was kind of a way for Rolex to be able to show the world, look at what our watches can do. They can not only dive to the deepest depths in the ocean with the Submariner series, but they can also now climb to the highest peak on Earth. So the first references they released of this model, the Oyster Perpetual, or a special version of the Oyster Perpetual, was the bubble back variations, and that was this reference 6098 and the 6150. And those were kind of the first iconic Explorers, or versions of the Explorer, but really they were Oyster Perpetual. The Explorer didn't really get its name until the year after they climbed Mount Everest. And Rolex kind of really played on the fact that it survived that mission, their watch survived their mission, and that's when they released the 6298 and the 6350. And both of these models featured Explorer on the dial, so actually written Explorer on the dial, and the famous 369 Arabic numerals on the dial. Really, that was such an important thing for them with Sir Hillary wearing that watch on Mount Everest, for them to be able to release that variation of the Oyster Perpetual, the Explorer, and really that name obviously being Explorer, there's not really much more of an incredible mission you can do as a human being than climb up Mount Everest and wear a watch and the watch survive. So it was a brilliant marketing tool for Rolex to use. There were quite a few changes to the watch over the years, kind of different case shapes, sizes. One of the most notable is in 1963 when Rolex released the Explorer reference 1016. That's definitely one of my favorite references of the Explorer. I think it's a really cool looking watch. It's a much smaller case size than today's case size, but it's just a brilliant looking watch. Really, and the watch has barely changed from then till now, the model that we're looking at today, apart from really case size and shape. And that 1016 actually remained current and in production for a number of years, one of the longest production runs of any Rolex watch, and actually finished production in 1989 when they replaced it with the 14270 reference, and that featured a slightly larger case size at 36mm, a slightly different case shape, different updated movement and bracelet, etc, etc. It was kind of a real revamp, but the essence of that 1016 was still there. That same looking dial, the same Arabic numerals, the same look overall was still present. But one of the most important features on that watch was the new sapphire crystal, which really added to its kind of Explorer credibility, the ruggedness of that watch as well. So it was a brilliant update to the Explorer 1. Between that time, Rolex actually released another model of the Explorer, which was the Explorer 2 in 1971. And the Explorer 2, that's kind of a completely other video, very different watch to the Explorer 1, but we'll look at that another time. And now we skip on to 2010, which is when we saw the release of the 214270, which is our modern day Explorer 1, and it's actually the reference that we're looking at here today. This watch featured a slightly larger case size at 39mm to kind of bring it up to today's larger watch standard, or preference of most people to wear larger watches. It still is slightly smaller compared to most of the other watches in the Rolex Sports collection. Most of the other watches are at least 40mm. So this is slightly smaller than the rest of them, but a really, really cool looking watch. So that concludes our history of the Explorer 1. There's loads more that you can learn about the Explorer 1, and eventually we'll do a video also on the Explorer 2 so I can discuss the kind of crossover and the relationship between those two watches. But let's look at some of the features on this Explorer 1 that we're looking at today, and that is the reference 214270. Really cool watch. Let's start with the clasp. As always, we've got our Oyster clasp, a brilliant clasp, fantastically engineered, very, very solid. It features a full brushed finish on top and then polished sides to the clasp. Brilliant clasp. I always say that I love these. We also have the Easy Link adjustment, so you can increase the size of the bracelet by 5mm in case it gets a little bit uncomfortable. You know, your wrist expands in the heat. This is a really nice feature to have. Next, moving on to the bracelet, we've got our standard brushed finish oyster bracelet. Fantastic bracelet. That's my favorite variation of the oyster bracelet. I much prefer it rather than the polished Centerlinks we see on some of the other watches in the Rolex collection. And that really adds to the kind of explorer theme, the really tool feel or utility feel that this watch has. It really is designed to be an exploring watch, a watch that can withstand daily abuse and also abuse of a climb and missions up Mount Everest. So to have it all polished just doesn't really work. I'm really glad that they've done it in a brushed finish. Moving up now onto the case, we have a 39mm case size. It is quite thin and slim. It's kind of similar to a Datejust in terms of its slimness and slender, real classic look. It's got sort of a Daytona look about it. I'd say it's actually maybe a little bit slimmer than a Daytona looks-wise. The tops of the case, so the tops of the lugs, are brush finish, and then the sides of the case are polished finish. And then the bezel is also polished finish, so it all ties together really nicely. And that really, for me, is a massive thing that I love about this watch, is the fact that yes, it is quite a more of a casual sports watch, utility watch, but it does have a really smart look about it. You've got that polished bezel in there just to bring it up a little in terms of class and kind of more classic look and feel. It definitely is more appropriate. That polished bezel really makes it feel a little bit more appropriate for smarter occasions also, which really adds to the versatility of this watch. Yes, it is an all brushed watch, but those polished accents and that black dial really makes it look quite smart and definitely very, very wearable with a suit. Moving now onto the dial, we have the iconic Explorer dial that really hasn't changed since the beginning. Definitely really hasn't changed much at all since the 1016 reference from 1963, which is pretty amazing to think it survived that many years and barely changed at all. I love the 369 Arabic numerals. I'm not always a fan of Arabic numerals on dials, but I think it just works really brilliantly on the Explorer. We've got these really nice, big, bold, really, really legible index markers with lots of lume as well. They're very, very bright lume on this watch. Again, really appropriate for an explorer, someone who will be using this watch at all times of the day, climbing at night, etc., etc. This, of course, has to be very legible, and that contrast against the black dial really helps. We've got our Mercedes hands, kind of Submariner style hands as well. No date also on this watch, but I don't think it's an issue. I love that really classic flat look to this piece. It just has a really elegant feel. I love the dial on this watch. Very, very simple and elegant. Overall, this watch really is so elegant. I'd say the reason why I'd say it's probably the best entry-level watch from Rolex is because it's just so incredibly versatile. It just is truly appropriate for any occasion. Because it's slightly more lower profile than, say, a Submariner or a GMT, and also the kind of simpler look to it, I personally think it is much more appropriate for smarter looks. Sometimes the Submariners and the GMTs, they're bulkier, that big ridged bezel can sometimes make it look a little bit too sporty and kind of out of place with a suit. But because this is just so slim, it just slips under a dress cuff or whatever shirt sleeve you're wearing, or your suit jacket, and it looks brilliant. And that black dial is just really, really nice. And as I said before, also those polished accents really add a nice, elegant, classic tone to the watch as well. So for all of those reasons above, that is why I award this probably the best watch you can get from Rolex at the entry-level price point. I love the 39mm case size of this watch. Overall, a brilliant timepiece. Even if you're not looking for an entry-level watch, this is just a fantastic everyday wearer, appropriate for any occasion, and this watch works brilliantly alongside a rose gold watch in your collection or a watch from another brand as well. Yeah, fantastic piece, and I'd say it's possibly one of the most underrated watches from Rolex. Thanks guys for watching. Let us know in the comments what you think of the Explorer 1, not just this reference 214270, but also the other references from the past. The vintage variations of this watch, like the 1016, are incredibly popular. They're beautiful watches and they'll remain classics forever. And as always, if you're interested in the Explorer, including the vintage references, then don't hesitate to contact us. It'd be a pleasure to call that watch into stock for you.